Hey everyone, welcome to the third installment of the LionHeart Radio Side Show with your host Rick Alexander and my co-host George Briones. Today's show is a little bit different than the first two that we did. We talk a little bit more about training in this one, but I think as this show kind of evolves, we're going to go back and forth between some of the deeper topics that we get into and then also some of our methodologies and training and a lot of Q&A type stuff as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this one as well. Without further ado, on to the show. So what do you got coming up for events?
I have the Peak 50K coming up in July. And then from there, pretty much couple more big, just some big weekends that I got to get some training in. Then I have the Kodiak 100, which is going to be the A race of the year, actually. So with that being said, everything else is kind of planned around that currently right now, especially when I signed up for it I think I signed up for it back in like February.
Yep.
Before I even like ran my second 50 miler. I was like, fuck it, I'm signing up for this 100 miler and we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And of course I decided to pick the fucking one of the hardest 100 mile races in California. And then I decided to pick also one of the hardest 50 milers in Southern California as well. So I felt like those were like some stepping stones to get me ready for the Kodiak. But, you know, like we talked about on the show yesterday or the show before was that kind of the Kodiak 100 stepping stone to like where I kind of want to go next year. I was having a conversation with my buddy Kevin and Josh, who I was running with yesterday, and they're kind of the ones that I get to hang out with and run with. We kind of can push each other and stuff like that. And Kevin just finished his first 100 miler for the year, and he got his first not his golden ticket, but his ticket to sign up for Western States next year.
Cool.
Right. And then I have my 100 miler. Josh has his 100 miler, and another buddy of mine, David, who runs with us, he also has 100 miler within the next like month and a half, 2 months. And we're like, well, let's just go ahead and all get tickets to the Western States and try to like see if we can put ourselves into the draft and see if we all can make it. Kind of the same thing like what Jim Walmsley and all those guys did. We're just kind of like joking around with it. It was like we'll just be the middle of the pack guys instead of the top five.
Uh-huh.
So kind of things I'm looking at towards Western States next year, along with looking at, and again, when I say Western States, if everyone doesn't know what Western States is one of the like famous races and one of the oldest races in ultra running in the United States. And it's one of those things where they take elite athletes in the top 10 from the year prior in the age group, and then they have pretty much about 50% of like GPP can get into the draft and get picked for this 100-mile race, and it's a tough race. These guys, some of these elite athletes are finishing in 15 hours, and I think, but the thing is though, is like it just goes, it goes from being at, I think it starts like not sea level and it goes up to like, it goes up pretty high and then drops back down. There's a lot of change in it. There's a lot of like climate change. There's a lot of variables in there that, you have to deal with, and the heat's like crazy out there. So that'd be cool to kind of jump into for Western States if I can get into that. But the goal would be is a 200-mile race next year. And I think 200 miles is something that I could do decently well in due to the fact that I'm not a big time runner, but I'm a very good power hiker, and I enjoy power hiking, and I can run. But it's more of one of those things where it's like I save it for certain parts instead of coming out of the gate right away and trying to run for, all 33 or 50 miles. Like, that's just not who I am. It's not saying that I don't like being in the pain cave. It's just I'm more of a conservative runner. I'm learning that I'm a very, very conservative runner. And maybe as I start getting further into the sport and I get more experience, I'll start kind of getting out of that. But right now I'm more of a conservative runner. So I come out sometimes too slow or just right. And, I end up just kind of like speed walking and power hiking a lot of times. I'm getting to the points where I can hold a 13 to a 14 minute hour power hike and a speed walk, which I think is really good because, down the road it'd be cool to finish 100 miler in 24 hours. So got that going on, and I know we've talked about that Ironman thing that we wanted to do 3 days back to back, and we haven't really talked much about that lately either. So
I know that's like the fucking demon that's just resting behind me all the time, and I'm like, oh shit, that's still there.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Like, it's like, oh fuck, like, so, and like I haven't swam much lately either. The past month and a half, 2 months, my swimming's kind of gone away to the wayside just because how much running I'm doing, and I haven't really been on the bike. So it's like, is it smart to get done with this 100 miler, see how I feel for 4 weeks, and then do an 8-week training cycle to go into this race, where it's 3 back-to-back Ironmans, and if people have listened to us talk about this before, it's kind of gnarly. And like whenever I tell it to guys who do Ironmans, and they're like, they're like, it's fucking miserable sitting on the bike for just one Ironman. You're about to go sit on it for 3 days back to back. Like, that's fucking insane. And then when they say it like that, you're like, fuck.
Yeah, when you really start doing the math, like, well, I definitely want to get into all your events and stuff, but when you really start doing the math of this 3 back-to-back Ironmans, it's like, so if you look at it, if you run an Ironman in sub 12 hours, that's considered a really fast time. Probably not the time that I'll run because I'm not fast. But then if you look at, okay, so then where are you going to finish? Okay, so then let's say maybe you're more around the 15-hour mark for one. Now, okay, so that leaves you 9 hours for the rest of the day until the next one starts. And so maybe the second one is 17 hours. Okay, well, now you got 6 hours. Like, at some point, it's like you have to, it's like, how do you balance trying to get fast enough so that you still have a rest period, but not killing yourself so that you can still run 2 more Ironman. So that is like a hard balance. Maybe we'll get into talking about that. But one of the things you brought up is you're like, okay, I signed up for this gnarly 100-miler before I had even run my second 50. That's actually, I think that's the advice that I give people a lot. Like that, maybe not straight to 100, but like when they want to run, they're like, oh, I should run a marathon before an ultra. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think you should just run an ultra. One, because ultras tend to hurt less. Like there's a lot of reasons for this, but like a marathon, what's going to happen is you're going to run that marathon and you're going to say fucking never again. Like you're going to be like, that sucked. I'm not doing it again. And you're selling yourself short because you're missing out on like all of the transcendent things that come with running an ultra, like all the like spiritual aspects and all the like mental toughness aspects. Like you're going to miss all of that just because running a marathon sucked. So I say like, I think it's cool to commit to something bigger. And I know our last episode was like about like, are your dreams too big or not? But I think it's okay to commit to something bigger as long as you're realistic about the training process.
Well, it's funny you say like commit to something bigger, is because even our last show we talked about was the whole like, hey, set up long-term goals and then have small goals leading up to it. And I think by being able to like set up a long-term goal and then back planning with smaller goals from there is actually a good way to do it. And I had a 100-miler. I looked at the 100-miler, found it, and signed up for it, right? And right away after that, I was like, I need to find a 50-miler that's going to go ahead and get me prepped, or at least let me know of a gauge of how it's going to be. Again, giving me some kind of realistic expectation and being like, all right, what do I need to work on and what do I not need to work on? And okay, cool, this is what it's going to feel like. I mean, and that's what I ended up doing, right? So like everything since then, it was like, all right, cool, here's a 50-miler. It has like over 13K in climbing and 50 miles. Like that's pretty gnarly climbing with a 50-miler. Usually you see that over 100 miles. And Kodiak's 100 is like 17K and 100 miles, but at elevation at 7,000, and it peaks out at 10K. I did it here at sea level, and I did get up to about 5K and then came back down to sea level. So it's one of those things where it's like, all right, cool. So yeah, now it's one of those, like you said, like our last show we talked about setting up goals, and I realistically kind of like looked at it the same way as I approached it, and I kind of talked about it. I was like, all right, cool, here's this 100-miler from there. Everything else is back plan. I know that I got to get a huge race in before that, and I did that, in March. Right, I did that, or it was the end of February, beginning of March, or something like that. Yeah. And then I haven't really raced any 50-milers since then. Getting ready for this 100-miler, all they've been is either 30Ks or 35Ks or a 50K, and just getting used to that. And then everything else has just been kind of just a lot of training and kind of getting up to Big Bear and trying to get as much elevation training in as possible.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: when you did that 50-miler, that was pretty gnarly. Did that change your approach to the 100 in your training?
Yes, it did, because of the fact, again, like I said, I'm not a runner. So for you to complete a 100-mile race, you have to run it. Like you have to run at least 40% of it.
Yeah, because the time cutoff is
because the time cutoffs, it will get you. So like that's one thing right there, and then it kind of got to me was like, all right, I finished this 50-miler like 35 minutes under the time cap.
Okay.
Right, like, and I pretty much power hiked about 80% of it, and 20 mile, and like the other 20% I kind of ran it.
Yeah, so 100 you won't get away with that.
No, and like right there and then I knew that I had time. When it was the end of February, beginning of March, I was like, all right, cool, I got time. Or it was like end of March, I got time. I was like, I have pretty much 5 months until August. I was like, I got some time. So it was one of those things where it's like, all right, cool. I got to develop just an overall just base of aerobic fitness to handle running for long periods of time, because I wasn't able to do that going into the 50 miler. And again, the mindset that I had was, oh, well, if I can manage at least a 14-minute mile pace, right, I'll be able, or 14 to a 17-minute mile pace over 100 miles, I'll finish under the time cap, like the way I looked at it, right?
Yep.
I'll just finish under like 30-something hours. If I can get good at power hiking, I can. But after I got done with that race, I was like, oh no. Like, there was places where I should have been running. And like, you know, and for instance, like, we know when we get into races, it's power hike the uphills, anything greater than 10%. You jog or you do as best as you can at 10%. All the downhills you pretty much run. And by running, I mean you fall with style. And all the flats you jog out at a maintainable pace that you can. Mm-hmm. And at that time period, getting ready for that, going into that 50 miler, I couldn't do that at all. Like, I was just so, I just had trained so much hiking that it was just, okay, cool. I started running for a little bit and I was like, this is stupid. Like, I want to hike.
Yep.
And I want to hike. And it came down to like, at what point does your hiking and your running, you know, really kind of, you know, where does it happen where the energy output, you know, equals each other up at the back end of the race?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And dude, that's the beauty of having B races, I think. Like, it gives you a very good gauge of where you're at currently. You know, like leading up to my 200 last year, a lot of people were like, oh, you're racing too much. Like, your schedule's too many, because I raced like 10 ultras. And I was like, or 9 leading up to that race. And I was like, honestly, like, I use them very, very strategically. It was like, I use them as dress rehearsals. So I, like, on some of them, I would wear exactly what I was going to wear in the 200. I figured out what gear worked, what didn't. Sometimes I would look stupid because I was like running a 50 miler with my gear for a 200, but like, it's not about that race. So it was like, I don't care. Like, I'm testing out different paces. I'm testing out different gear. I'm testing out different food. Like, that was a huge thing because, like, let's be honest, like, I would have a lot of trouble forcing myself to go out on a Saturday and run 50 miles. Like, it's just such a time commitment. And so I was like, I know that if I sign up for this, it kind of holds my feet to the fire, and then I could strategically use them. And that's like, sounds like what you did. And then every time you do it, it like gives you an opportunity to tailor your training going forward.
Well, and it's funny you bring that up, actually, because I'm on a deload week right now, and my deload week right now consists of like 35 miles, because I just put in 70, so we cut it in half, and I'm at 35 miles now this week. And I didn't run. I mean, I walked Sunday, walked Monday, walked Tuesday, nothing on Wednesday, and I just put in about 8.5 miles yesterday with close to about 3,200 feet in elevation gain. Mm-hmm. And I felt good, right? And I was like, all right, cool, legs are coming back. And this week on Saturday, I have an 8 to 9 mile run. Plus Sunday, I have a 12-mile run. And I found a 10K that or a 10K or a half marathon that I might just jump into. And I might just do the half marathon on Saturday just to do it. Get in there and actually just treat it as like my first 13 miles of the Kodiak. And like you talked about, like, do a dress rehearsal and come out like, all right, cool, come with my full gear on, make sure what I have. And the goal for this race is to come out holding the pace that I want, because the first 12 miles of the Kodiak, you're going to be able to jog a little bit of it, right?
Yeah.
So I want to be able to come out and be like, all right, how does it feel if I was just to jog at a 11 to a 12-minute, maybe a 10-minute mile pace for those first 12 miles? How do I feel, and what am I eating, and what do I need to do to put down food? Because I just got done with the 50K last week, this past weekend, and one thing I noticed was I wasn't eating enough food. Or no, I ate enough food, I didn't drink enough water this time. So I've done 21-mile races where I drank too much water and I didn't eat enough food. This time it was the opposite. At the same time, though, I also found that wearing ultras right now, and you're going to hear me say this, wearing ultras has been causing my hamstrings to blow up, actually. So the zero drop is putting tension on my posterior chain, and it's causing it to pull my hamstrings more when I start climbing up mountains, if that makes sense.
It does. It's pretty common.
Yeah, so I've got out of – so luckily it's deload week, so I got out of them. And I grew up, like, when I was in the Marine Corps and running, I grew up running Innovates. I love the fuck out of Innovates, dude. Like, they're the shoe that I enjoyed, right? But, like, when I came back into running, I was like, oh, I need to get into something better that's going to be able to handle my wear and tear of running. And then all of a sudden I started noticing Innovates makes ultra trail running shoes, and they make shoes for ultra running. Like, some of the top guys in the UTMB right now are wearing Innovates. Like, so I was like, let me try them out. So I bought a pair this week, And I walked in them for the first 2 miles on Tuesday, nothing yesterday, and I put 8 miles in them yesterday for the first time. And dude, I'll tell you what, man, nothing against ultras. I love them to death. Like they're a great shoe, and the space is amazing. Just I'm starting to find they're not exactly what I need. But when it comes to having the agility with the footwork going downhill and bombing downhill, on a 20 degree fucking descent, or even a 30, like being able to, and it's a technical terrain, and being able to have the foot skills to put your feet where you want and not feel like you have a fucking clunk on the bottom of your foot is amazing. And I had to do that yesterday. I mean, I had like a mile and a half up to this peak that we touch every single time, and then it's like a 2.5 mile back down, or you can go vice versa. But the downhill's technical and it's fun, right? It's like gumming on your mountain bike, and if you're a mountain bike rider, you know what I'm talking about. You get on it, it's just single track, and you're just bombing downhill. But now you're on your feet, and like that was one thing I
controlled chaos coming down.
It is, yeah, right. Like, and is it dangerous? Yes. Is it because of the fact of like you can roll an ankle, but that's how focused you have to be, like running down these hills. And that's another aspect of like the whole thing in ultra running is the fact of like you have to be there like 100%, because if you zone out, you could fuck yourself up.
Yeah, it's funny because like there's been a ton of times in ultras, especially because what happens is your hamstrings obviously get wrecked from all the climbing, and then when you go downhill, you don't have that hamstring which pulls you back all the time, so that those get fatigued. So then you start relying on the front of your leg, which is your quads, and then your toes get smashed into the front of your shoes. There's a ton of times though where I've asked myself after a really gnarly downhill, like, did I just run down that, or did I repeatedly fall and catch myself?
Right, that's exactly what it is, though, dude. Yeah. It's like it's controlled falling. It's literally controlled falling. All you were doing was like, all right, I'm gonna push my hips and shoulders forward over my body, and I'm gonna go ahead and just make sure my footwork is spot on.
Yeah, and just make up a ton of time, which is cool.
Well, and it's cool, yeah, because I actually used that example this past race at the Holcomb. There was one part where we had to do, like, it was one of our main climbs in the middle of the race, like mile 15 to like 19 was a big old climb. And then the next 2.5 miles, 3 miles was all downhill, but it was very technical. And you know how we call it in ultra running, when we get to snipe somebody, when we get to pass them by or whatever else.
Yeah.
And I passed at least 4 people. Like, people passed me on the flats, and they kind of like, I kind of managed my way up the mountain and caught up to them, and then I passed them on the back end of the downhill, and I was fine, and there was no problems. Like, again, like I said, what I'm noticing right now, dude, is the fact that my hamstrings are the only thing blowing up. My quads feel amazing, and my feet are not hurting.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things, is like, I'm getting ready to run 100 miles, and the way I like to explain this is like I'm replacing my weapon from war with my shoes now, because that is that's my lifeline. Like, my shoes fucking fall apart, my feet become wrecked, and if you don't know, like, having blisters on your feet and having to run still in places where it fucking hurts, like, it's miserable. It's one of the most miserable pains in the world, and you can talk on that, dude. You know that.
Yeah. Oh, it's awful. Yeah, the downhills suck in ultras, but you know, I have like 3 sort of tenets when it comes to like programming endurance training. And one of them, the most important one to me, is posterior chain strength and endurance, because I think that's the thing. Like, that's what I've noticed. It gets the most fatigue in these kind of races. It ends up causing all kinds of other problems. And so, like, for that reason, like, if I only have 30 minutes to work out in a day, I will go in and I'll work posterior chain midline stability. Like, those, if I only can do one thing, or if I could tell somebody, like, if you could only had enough energy or time or whatever it is to focus on one thing outside of just doing the thing, which is like running and biking, then I would say, you know, focus on posterior chain strength.
You know what you just made me think about right now? I'm going to go today after the show, and I'm going to go buy a kettlebell right here I have a Play Against Sports here.
Yep.
I'm going to put the kettlebell inside my house, and I'm just going to go ahead and swing it every 2 hours for 20 reps.
That's what I was going to say. So specifically kettlebell swings.
Yeah, I'm just going to go grab the kettlebell swing and swing it for 2 minutes straight or whatever else every 2 hours, and just swing.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's cool. So when you're looking at this schedule, you had the 50 miler, you're getting ready for the 100. What does your lifting look like?
It's funny, man, as you actually asked that, is I've actually cut my lifting back down to 2 days a week right now.
Okay.
And a lot of it, like you talked about, is posterior chain focused. And I've actually laid off the squats as much as it sounds, as I've actually laid off the squats a little bit more, because of the fact of how much running I'm doing and how much my quads are just taking a beating.
Yep.
And when I do squat, you know, it's single leg work into maybe some box squat work, but everything else is posterior chain focused along with upper body. And I've actually gotten into a lot more rock climbing lately, actually. So I'm actually rock climbing, twice a week sometimes, 3 times a week, just because of the fact that one, like,
It's
all right,
fun.
cool, like it's fun and it's a full body workout, and the climbing gym that I go to has a gym in it right there and then. So if I want to climb first and I'm done climbing, then I can do some midlines work and maybe some posterior chain work. Or if I don't want to climb, I just walk in and do that. And they offer yoga and they have a bike and they have a rower at top. It's like cool. So usually I go in. I usually just touch all of it at one time. Right, I'll do some posterior chain, midline work, go climb, or vice versa. And that's kind of realistically what I've been doing, just because of the fact that I don't want to have lifting feel like a job going into the gym. Being like, because of the fact that I'm doing so much running already and so much focused on that, I want something else that kind of gets me out from the running. Again, like running is an adventure for me. It is, right? But if you don't run over 50 miles, or let's say if you don't run over 40 miles a week, I'm going to use that like for some people. If you don't run over 40 miles a week, it is very mentally fatiguing.
Yeah.
Very mentally fatiguing. And with that being said, it's one of those things where it's like, cool, your deload consists of you not running. It's not because your body needs a deload, because it does, right? But more of your mind needs a deload.
Right.
Like, and I don't know if anybody's ever really focused or really noticed it, but like, that the cognitive function of everything just kind of goes from being at like 100%, it just drops and drops and drops. And you're just like, man, what is wrong with me right now? Or why don't I want to do anything? Or why don't I want to go out to when you walk out to the trails, you're like, man, this is no, and like, it took that from, you heard of the speed goat? He ran across the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
Okay, I forgot his name. I watched the documentary on it yesterday, but I forgot his name. But I know him by the speed goat. He's the Hoka one. They call him the speed goat. And he actually talked about
the guy that just set the FKT for the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
He wrote the book North. Scott.
Yeah, what's his name? Not Scott Jenkins. It's another guy that someone beat his time.
Gosh dang it. Yeah, keep going. I'm going to look it up while you're talking.
I totally forgot, dude. But anyways, he talks about how he literally takes weeks off at a time sometimes.
The dude's a legend in running.
No, he is a legend. He's won
Scott Jurek.
Scott Jurek, but someone beat him.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Someone just beat him again beat him just recently. Scott Jurek did it in like 49 hours.
Yeah.
And this guy did it, or 49
days.
In like 49 days and like 20 something hours or something like that. And this guy, I forgot, I'm sorry, man, if he ever listens to our show, he's like, you fucking assholes. But he finished it in 45 days and 22 hours. So he beat the world record by 2 hours. And that's over 2,000 miles in 46 days, if anybody doesn't know.
So his name is it Joe McConaughey?
Yes. Is that him?
Well-known speed hiker set a new record on the Appalachian Trail today. He hiked the 2190-mile route in an unofficial FKT of 45 days, 12 hours, and 15 minutes.
Oh, that's another guy. But the one that we saw on the TV show, the one I watched in the movie, was 22 hours. Yeah. But anyways, dude, like, he talks about it all the time. He ends up saying that, sometimes I'll take a week and a half, 2 weeks off, and he's like, it's good for my psyche, it's good for my body, and it keeps me refreshed, and like, that dude's been running ultras for over 15, 20 years, however else you want to think about. A lot of these guys who are doing this for that long. And it's like, you don't have to always go out there and grind out miles. Like, that's not the need for it. Like, if your mind and your body is like, hey, you're tired, the same thing with workouts. Like, if you don't want to go out and go train for the day, don't go train. Go do something that makes you happy. Because, again, input, output. If it's a negative input to you because you have to go train, guess what's going to happen to you? You're either going to have a negative output, i.e. you're going to injure yourself, or you're going to go ahead and just fuck yourself for the next couple of days of training. So, especially with running and having to run this many miles and be out there for that long, I really take that to heart now, and it's something that I've learned with it all, I guess you can say, with ultra running, is like, you really have to like pull the throttles back a little bit when it's necessary, because of the fact you can burn yourself out again and turn something that you love into something you hate. Yeah, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, you have to guard yourself against that. Like, I mean, that happened to me with CrossFit. It was like I got to a point, I was training so hard for so long, and I realized, like, my life had just become 6 hours a day in these dark four walls of a gym, and I just got so burnt out that I, like, left the sport completely for a super long time. But one thing I've noticed about myself from ultra running specifically is once I got into ultra running, like you mentioned, it's an adventure. Like every time you run and race, like that's one of my favorite things about it is like managing all of the unknowns. And like I don't run the same race twice ever. Like that's a rule I have because I love looking at new parts of the world. Like I think it's just an epic way to see something and explore something. But one thing I've noticed about myself is that the gym is my sanctuary. It always will be. It's like the place where I can go, I can clear my head, I can, everything. But one thing I noticed about myself is as I got into ultra running and I loved it so much, I found it harder and harder to be inside of a gym, especially when it's nice outside. I would be like, fuck, I know I need to lift. I want to lift, but like I don't want to be inside right now. Yeah. And so one of the things I've started doing is taking a kettlebell outside and trying to do more stuff like that because, I still love lifting. I always will. And I might even get back into strength sports at some point in the future. But man, I love being outside, and as I'm like feeding more of the adventurous side of myself, I could deal with being inside less and less because I'm like, it's hard to justify because I'm like, I want to be outside doing what I love right now.
Well, and that's the same thing here, dude. It's like one of those things right now. It's like, well, I'm getting ready to go into this race here in Kodiak, and it's like, all right, do I cut back the gym time and do I start being outdoors more so I can get used to just being outside, right? So I'm kind of in the mindset right now is like, all right, cool, I'll get my run in. And then go do a bike session on the mountain bike, or vice versa. Go do a mountain bike session for an hour, and then kind of go back, do some more work, whatever else, and then go back out and run again for a couple hours. Depending on the days that I have that time to do it. Again, I get work on my legs. It's less stress, and I get to enjoy the outdoors and actually get used to being outside as I'm going to be on this 100-mile race. But again, like I said, I look at the longevity of it, and I look at the stepping stone. I just trying to mentally prepare myself for when I do sign up for a 200-mile race and get out there and go after it. Yeah. To be able to be okay with moving for 4 days, 3 days.
And a 200-miler is different than a 100 in the fact that it really comes down, because the times are more generous, it really comes down to, can you keep moving forward or can you not? Like that's legitimately what it comes down to, because like for most of the hundreds, you only have to move at if I remember correctly, it's like 2 miles an hour. Like, I mean, it's 30-minute miles. Like, that's slower than almost anybody would walk. And of course, you have to build in sleep time. You have to build in aid time. You have to build in time for the wheels to completely fall the fuck off where you're not moving at all. In my, you know what I mean? In my sense, you had to build in time to get high altitude pulmonary edema and deal with all the shit that comes with that. So, like, there's shit you got to deal with. So it's not like you can move at a 30-minute mile and think you're going to finish. But the fact is, the times are generous. And so more than trying to train your run, it comes down to being able to move forward.
And that's the thing. That's the one thing I love about this whole like training for ultras, is the fact that every single race brings a new endeavor, right? It's like, oh, cool. Like, I'm good at running now. I'm good at hiking. Oh, but this one is going to be focused on more hiking. So I got to go ahead and get ready for it. And a lot of mountain, because like one thing I've noticed too is like there's ultra runners who run flats and just do that kind of stuff. And then you have ultra runners who are mountain ultra runners. Right?
Yeah, everybody's got their specialty.
Everybody got their specialty, right? And one thing that I'm learning is I really enjoy mountain ultras. Like, they're fucking a kick in the dick. Mm-hmm. The sights are amazing, and you never know what you have to do, right? Because some mountain ultras can just be a flat ground at 7K in elevation with a little bit of rolling hills, right? Like, that can be one. Or it's going to go ahead and be an ultra of at 7K for 17 to 20K in climbing with 20K in descent. Like, that's pretty fucking gnarly also, right? Like, you're going to be your whole lower half is just going to be gone.
Right. Well, one of the things I've realized about myself is the thing that drew me to this sport is the idea that you're kind of tackling a new frontier. Like, it's always like for me, I had gotten decently good at lifting, and I was just kind of looking for a new frontier to kind of tackle. And this idea of like always moving forward, for me right now in this moment, this is what I was talking to you a couple weeks ago about, is like I feel like I'm sort of there. Not that I would finish every single race I ever started, because you never know what could come up. It's so much time for things to go wrong. But I do feel like my ability to just keep moving forward despite the obstacles, despite the cramps, despite everything that would come up, I feel very confident in that. Like I feel like I'm very good at that. And so in a sense, that frontier feels almost tackled. And now I'm sort of looking to like get back to shorter stuff. Like I was telling you, like after this year's events. I think next year my focus is going to be the 50-mile distance, because that's a new frontier. Like, I'll have to do tons more speed work, like being able to really suffer for that 8-hour time frame. It's like, it's the difference between going in and doing a max squat or going in and doing Fran. Like, it's a different kind of hurt. And so for me, that's a new frontier that I kind of want to start exploring.
Well, this kind of brings me into this, dude. And one thing, it was funny. I was talking to somebody on a run the other day, when I was talking to somebody on one of the races I was doing, and we were talking about the different kind of skill sets that you need as an ultra runner. They're like, the one main skill set that you need as an ultra runner is to suffer. If you're good at suffering, if you can suffer and survive, you're going to complete an ultra no matter what. Mm-hmm. But then from there, it goes into, well, like, how good is your uphill running? How good is your downhill running? How good is your uphill running with your downhill running and then flats?
Yeah.
Like, you start talking about those different skills, and every single one of those skills and that skill set brings a whole nother level type of pain into it, right? Because, okay, I'm good at suffering and surviving, moving slow, right? That's cool. Like, I can just move at my own pace. That's going to keep me there and be conservative. But now, what if I have to run the next 30 miles all up hills, right? And like, so that's a whole nother mindset of being able to put yourself in that pain cave. You think about that, right? Like, so again, we go back to that same thing of like what ultras bring to us. And like, we can look at other sports and be like, well, you can do that and everything else like that. But I really think that ultras are special in that way, that you have to, like, if you really want to be good in this sport, like, you have to be okay with suffering with having very good skill sets. And we can use CrossFit, for example, and like, yes, you have to be good at suffering in CrossFit, right? But you also have to be able to do all these other skills while suffering.
The technical work.
Right? Like, That's exactly what it is. So when we talk about your races, dude, what do you have coming up?
Okay, actually, so by the time this episode comes out, I will have already announced it. So the big thing that I'm training for right now is a 237-mile run from Fort Bragg, North Carolina to Virginia Beach, Virginia. And so there's a few different reasons on why I picked that this year and why I made it my A race. But essentially, like, the thing that I love about this, I'm doing it for charity. Okay. So there's a sense where this isn't a race. It's something I made up. Did I say I'm going to wear body armor?
No, you haven't said nothing like that yet.
Oh, shit. Okay. So I'm going to wear body armor for this whole thing. And so there's a sense that, I'm getting out of the military. This is actually going to be my second to last week in the military that I do this event. So there's a sense that, like, I'm getting out and I'm lucky. I got all my arms. I got all my legs. For the most part, my mentality is intact. And so, dude, a shitload of friends that I've had weren't so lucky, man. People die, people lose their lives, and I feel blessed that I've had this opportunity to get out. In the sense, so far so good. And so, in a sense, I want to give back. And so, the way that I'm going to do that is, for people that don't know, Gold Star families are families that have lost somebody, and they still have to figure out some way to give some semblance of a normal life after that. And one of the things that people don't think about, like, you see the numbers of the people that die in war, but you don't think about the fact that, like,
their families 2 times that.
Every Christmas, man, that's kids that aren't going to fucking see their parents. It's kids that aren't going to get the gifts that their parents would give them. And I've seen it close up, and it breaks my fucking heart. I hate it. And so one of the simple ways that I've decided to, like, kind of fight back is Gold Star Teen Adventures, or this organization that basically they take these kids who are Gold Star families and they do stuff that their parents would have done for them. So they go on diving trips, they do mentorship, they do leadership, they do hiking trips, like super really cool stuff that, like, I believe hard in the power of adventure and sport and, all the transcendent things that come along with that. And so I'm super stoked that I found this organization and they do it on a shoestring budget. So I'm dedicating this race to them. I'm doing this only to raise money for them. So that's, like, kind of the big picture why I'm doing it. And then I thought, well, okay, so if I'm going to do this, I might as well stay true to form and make it really fucking hard. So one of the things is, I think wearing body armor, it's going to draw attention to it. It's something you don't see very often, and so the novelty of it, I'm hoping, will help me raise more money. And then there's also the fact that it's a new stimulus. It's something I've never trained for. I mean, you typically you want to keep your shit as light as possible, and so just adding a 25-pound vest right out of the gate, like that, I'm excited about that. It's like a new thing that I have to figure out how to train for. And then I also believe that I've gotten a little bit comfortable in my ultras where, like I said, the ability to move forward for me has kind of become a thing. But what I've noticed is I rely on different parts of ultras. So I rely on aid stations super heavily. I also rely...
That's funny because we're the opposite. I rely on myself. I carry more on me than I should be.
Oh, dude, I to a fault, like, I'm just, like, mathematically figuring out how many more fucking steps I have to an aid station. Like, I am very, like, reliant on it, and I hate that about myself because now I've become too comfortable. And so, okay, so aid stations are something I rely on. The scenic part, that's another huge thing that I rely on. So, one of the things that made, like, Tahoe so epic is you get to these bluffs and you look out over fucking Lake Tahoe, or at night you look up and you see the night is just completely filled with stars and falling stars, and that aspect of it is another thing that gets me through. And so taking that away, this is going to be road. This is flat.
I was about to say, like, where's this going?
Yeah, so this is flat road as far as you can see in one direction. Like, when I get on straightaways and ultras, I fucking hate it because
Me too.
You can just see how far you still have to go. This route is just miles and miles. There's nothing on either side but a field. Like, there's nothing to look at. It's just side of the road. It's just, you're just suffering with you and your pain. And so I like this idea that I've taken all of these normal things away. And then lastly, the thing about it, I'm trying to make it as close to what a sanctioned race would be as possible. And so I'm going to track the whole thing. So the whole time you'll be able to see me moving, like, online. And I haven't released the website yet, but you'll see me moving online, so that I didn't get in a fucking van or some bullshit, because I know just from being in the fitness industry, I've seen people that do these individual challenges, and I will say that there's more than meets the eye. A lot of times these people aren't doing everything that you think they're doing, and the reason they do a lot of these individual challenges is because if they were to do a challenge that was sanctioned, they would be fucked because they're not good enough athletes. And I've seen that with my own eyes. I'm not going to, like, drop names or anything, but it's something I've seen, and it's something I want to stay away from. And so I'm going to track the whole thing. I'm going to try to produce as much content during it as I can so people can, like, really see the suffering that's involved. And that's going to be another challenge for me because I get, like, I guess pissy would be the right word. Like, I don't want anyone near me.
I could totally see you becoming a dick.
Yeah.
When you get in your lows. I could totally see that.
Asshole. Like, I don't even want fucking headphones in my ears. Like, I am like, get away from me, don't touch me. Like, that's how I get. And so I'm going to have to, like, all of these different things that I've noticed over the last, like, 12 or 13 ultras that I do, I'm like, I'm fucking taking them all off the table. And then I'm adding a weight vest. And so, I mean, that's why. And then also it's going to be the longest thing I've ever done. It's 237 miles, I think. So,
damn. So how are you gonna do that? You're gonna have a van follow you the whole time?
Not follow me the whole time because that would really suck for somebody to have to drive for 4 days. I am gonna allow myself pacers from different sections. So I'm gonna open it up. Basically, anybody that wants to run with me, I'm gonna say, like, hey, let me know. And I'm gonna have pre-designated places where the van will be just for emergency and for water. So even on self-supported races, one of the things that you'll notice is that they still bring water. You don't carry all your water for 4 days. Because I would have to, like, pull a wagon behind me if that were the case. So, and I'm already wearing a fucking vest. So I'm going to have, like, designated places where the van will be for water stops and for emergency and stuff like that. And, yeah, other than that, man, I'm going to start out and I'm going to try to finish in 100 hours. Like, I think that's a appropriate time for that distance. So that's my goal. Now, if I don't finish in 100 hours, I'm still going to go. I'm just going to keep going because I want to finish. But that's kind of my goal. And I think I can do it in three and a half days. So we'll see.
You have the date set for this yet or no?
I do, but I don't want to announce it yet just in case it's changed by the time this episode comes out. But it's going to be the 2nd to 3rd week in October. So one of the things I fucked up bad is I'm doing this, like, 500-mile bike ride with Ryan Muncie for charity also, and that's at the beginning of October. And so I'm basically going to have, like, a week between doing that bike ride and then this. But I don't think those two things are too antagonistic, that they're going to, I think biking is relatively low impact. Like, it'll be okay to go from one to the other.
I think especially if you take that full week off getting ready for it. I mean, legitimately, like, just plan and get everything set up and ready for. Don't even worry about running. Just know that you're gonna have to run for 4 days straight after this, and use the bike as a taper.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then so you and I, we have this 3 Ironmans in November. So the thing that I've been trying to figure out how I'm gonna do is like, that is an overwhelming fucking thing to try to train for. If I were to just try to train for all of those 3 things separately, I would get overwhelmed and I'd probably overtrain and fall apart. So the way that I'm approaching it so far is I'm training for the 3 Ironmans, but while I run, I'm wearing a vest for about 60% of the time. And other than that, like, as long as I train for that kind of volume in those 3 things, I believe that I'll be able to do the other things successfully.
And that's kind of where the whole thing that, we've kind of talked about when we've gotten to this whole like apex / hybrid type style training is like being able to look and being like, oh, I'm biking like crazy, I'm swimming like crazy, and I'm running like crazy. Like, realistically, it's like, okay, cool, let's go put these all together. And yes, people will be like, well, coming off the bike into a run after 100 miles is going to be fucking really shitty. It's like, yes, we know that. But we also ran 50 and 100-mile races to where we know what our legs feel like when we're 50 miles in, 60 miles in, and 70 miles in. And realistically, you think about that 100-mile bike ride, and especially it's one of those things where you've broke it down, and I kind of use this where it's a kind of like a 3-to-1 type. 3 miles on a bike equals 1 mile running.
Yeah.
So if we're doing 112 miles on the bike, we're only going to be realistically running, 30, 40 miles?
Yeah.
Am I right? Or like right around there? So, and then coming on and dropping another, 25, 26 miles on top of that's going to be putting us right around 50 miles for the day, which I kind of look at it like, okay, cool, sweet. So we're going to go ahead and it's pretty much going to go swim 2 miles. I'm going to run 50 miles each day.
Right.
Run, even though I'm going to be on the bike for, a certain time period and stuff like that. But it's one of those things where, like you talked about too, where you got comfortable at suffering to where all you got to do is just keep pedaling on the bike.
Yeah.
As to where running, like, if you slow down, you're walking. Yep. On the bike, like, you can pedal and you're still holding a decent pace that you don't have to really sweat too much compared to on running on your feet. Kind of want to bring it back to the whole charity thing, dude. Like, I've never really heard so much of the Goat Star families or what they talk about that. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what they're like? I know you talked a little bit about what they're doing, but like, how are you going to be raising the money during that time period? Are you going to go ahead and start raising money prior to the race, or are you going to raise money while you're running for those 4 days?
So so by the time this podcast comes out, I will have already launched the charity. So if you guys follow me on Instagram or you follow LionHeart Radio, you probably will have already seen it. But essentially, I'm going to launch the fundraiser at the beginning of July, and I'm going to try to raise money all summer long for these guys leading up until the race. And I anticipate during the race, I will be able to raise a little bit more because people will be able to actually like see the suffering and just how I've done charity events in the past. Like, that's something I've noticed, like, while it's going on, people are a little more inclined to donate. But I will say, like, man, I got to a point at some, like, with these events, or competing in general with fitness, where I just, like, started to ask myself, like, what am I doing this for? Like, what is the reason that I'm doing this? And, for me, a medal, trophy, or a belt buckle ain't it. Like, it's just not enough. I don't even give a shit about those. I throw them away. And so I just, like, for me, it's like, that just seems like such in a lot of ways, I talked to Abby Levine, pro ultra runner on LionHeart Radio about this, but it's like, in a lot of ways, it's such a selfish pursuit. The whole time, I mean, you have people that are out there supporting just you. Their pacers are there for just you. They're losing sleep for just you. I mean, during Tahoe 200, like, my support crew, they were fucking awesome, and they lost a ton of sleep. Like, they didn't sleep at all. And that's something you don't think about. You're like, you think I'm working hard.
Well, what's funny is, like, hearing all this stuff, people saying this, though, dude, too, and it's like, I got to help crew my buddy Kevin, not too long, just a couple aid stations, just like I was busy, but seeing, like, his other guys that were there all night and seeing, like, they got to be awake the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, because they got to meet you at aid stations, and they don't know when, and so they're trying to track you online, and, they got to find the damn thing, so they're driving. Like, it's just a very individualistic pursuit, and I kind of have a problem with that. Like, it bugs me to, like, want to lean on people that much and want to just ask them. And a lot of friends, like, they don't mind. They love doing it. I love doing it for other people. But nevertheless, like, it's still an individual pursuit. And so for me, I was like, if I'm going to continue to do these with my life, like, I have to make them mean more. And that's not all altruistic either, because one thing I noticed about Tahoe, in that race I raised money for the Heroes Project. And one of the things I noticed is there's no way I'm taking $3,000 from my friends and family and then not finishing this motherfucking race.
Yeah.
You know,
we talked about it before, the external stress, the external motivation.
Yeah, so it's a huge motivator. So it's not completely altruistic, but I just love this idea of like, you know, putting a little purpose behind your pain. And I would encourage anybody, dude, if you want to run your first 50 miler, it's something, or first ultra, whatever the fuck you're doing, like it's something that has novelty to it. It's something people don't see every day. It's, even though the sport's growing in popularity, most people think it's still fucking crazy. And so if you're doing it, why not use it as an opportunity to give back, to raise money for a cause that means something to you? It's going to make that race mean so much more to you.
And it's funny, man, is you actually got me into doing that, because my first ultra, I raised money for Project Motive for the bikes for Christmas.
Yeah.
My second 50 miler, I raised money for, it was funny, I think I told you about that, right, where I raised it for children to go see their parents who are incarcerated. It's called Get on the Bus program. I ended up raising close to $2,000 and got to deliver that to them.
That's right.
And even for the Kodiak 100, I didn't even talk about it yet. And I think I mentioned it when I signed up for it. But since we're talking about charities and what we're doing it for and why we're doing it and having those external motivators, I'm going to be carrying 100 dog tags of fallen fucking brothers from the military.
Damn.
And I'm going to place, I haven't thought about exactly how I want to do it. I'm either going to place a dog tag every mile, just drop it and leave it there on the mountain, like, because I'm suffering also, and understand, like, this is my why behind it, right? It's like, I'm going to go ahead and carry some of the most closest dudes with me with my heart that I've lost due to combat, suicide, or whatever you want it. And then I'm going to go ahead and either drop it every single mile and being like, hey, look, I'm suffering just as much as you have, and I'm enjoying this suffering for you guys. And here I'm going to go ahead and place this dog tag out on this mountain to know that, hey, like, it's one of those, like, just, hey, like, this is what we're doing, and showing respect to them on a deeper level of, instead of kind of standing there and being at the funeral or whatever else, but standing there and showing, like, hey, I'm suffering for you guys also. And even if I don't know who they are, still suffering for you guys just because I respect who you guys were before me, and this is what we're doing. I'm still here. I got both legs. I got arms. I'm very healthy mentally, physically, and all those things, and that's what I'm going to be doing. Teaming up with Recon Sniper Foundation, which are really good buddies of mine. They're going to be making the dog tags, and we're going to go ahead and pretty much sell them, and the donations are going to be going ahead to the Recon Sniper Foundation, and from there we'll go ahead and pick the charities that we want to go ahead and drop them to. But Recon Sniper Foundation is a charity already for fallen recon brothers and sniper brothers to their families. So it's going to be a lot of snipers and a lot of recon guys the way we're going to do it, and we're actually going to open that up probably by the time the show drops. We'll have it posted already, and you can go ahead and purchase a dog tag, and you can purchase a dog tag and put the person you want on the back of that dog tag for me.
That's a dope idea.
So, like, if you wanted to pay and purchase your own, you get to donate. If you want to donate $50 for the dog tag, you donate, and boom, you get to put your fallen brother on there and whatever else. And on the back, on the other back of the dog tag, it's going to have the Recon Sniper Foundation and Sawfleet's logo on it. And so I'm not sure if I'm going to do it every mile or if I'm going to do it every 10 miles, just because of the fact, and that's another thing too, is like, do I want to suffer every single mile knowing that I got to put this down every single mile to know that I put 100 dog tags down every single mile, or do I want to go every 10 miles and put down 10 dog tags at one area, right? Like, group them together and be like, all right, this is group A, this is group B, this is group C, group D, and like go all the way through like that. Haven't really thought about that, but I'm going to be carrying 100 dog tags with fallen brothers. And again, like, when this show drops, it will be open by then. To go ahead and start asking to put yourself put your fallen brother on that, or fallen whatever else. And I have 10 dog tags dedicated to myself that I'll be putting down the last 10 miles to get me home.
Dude,
that's gets me teary-eyed thinking about it.
Dude, that's fucking sweet. I'm buying it. Like, that was such a good idea. I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, I'm buying a fucking dog tag.
Yeah,
that's
dude.
Fucking cool, man.
It's just like, it was one of those things, again, external motivations, right? Like, I know that I have to carry my brothers to this finish line, or carry them across, and like know that, like, when I finish that finish line, that I suffered for not just them, but for their families who are still suffering not to have them.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, you talk about Christmas, Thanksgiving, like birthdays, just every single day, like, to be able to sit there and call your mom. Like, you think about that, bro, and that's just like it's hard.
Yeah.
Right? Like, fucking hard to know that, like, hey, your brother there is no longer, like, and it's funny, I've never said this before, but I carry a dog tag on me, and this is where the idea came from, because I carry a dog tag on me everywhere I go. My buddy Mikey Guillory passed away, whatever else, and we were really close, and he used to do, like, for Christmas, he used to go and do Santa type things. He would go ahead and dress up for Santa, and he'd be Santa and go and pass toys out for Christmas, and he'd do charity stuff, and just a really good dude. And like, he was one of those guys who was a super strong dude and who could fucking run really, really fast, but he hated running, but he still did it. So I carry his dog tag everywhere I go, every race I do, I carry my dog tag on me. And that's kind of where the idea came from, was like, I'm carrying this, like, hey, I'm suffering also, dude, and you get to suffer with me because you're on me now, right? Like, I want to do that for all the families too, man. That's kind of where it came to with the idea of the dog tag. So,
dude,
I gotta thank you though to that, man, because like you're the one that kind of set the bar for that. I mean, like why are we running these races? Like, is it for a fucking for a trophy? Is it for a buckle? Is it for a medal? Or is it for for others that are out there doing it and helping you with it also?
One of the things that I noticed, in the last episode we talked about how, well, I talked a little bit about like last year and how much it fucking sucked for me, and like how just mentally I was in a rough spot, and like all these things. Now, one thing I'll say that happened to me last year that made me really notice this is, we raised a bunch of money for bikes. We bought bikes for Christmas for kids whose parents were unable to afford them. And I've told this, I think I told it on Ryan's podcast, but I'll tell it right now. Like, there was a moment where we raised all the money, and then I had 30 or so volunteers come in, and then we put all the bikes together, and then we gave them to all of the parents. And there was a moment where a girl came in, and they didn't know they were getting bikes because of this program. They can't offer bikes technically because it's just so expensive, and they just couldn't do it. But I was like, this is awesome, so I'll give people bikes that weren't even expecting them. And I know for me what a bike meant growing up, like for Christmas, like, it was everything. So so I went and I had this opportunity, and one of the ladies that came in, we gave her a ticket. We were like, hey, so we're going to be able to give you a bike for Christmas this year for your kids. And one of the things she said was, she gave it back. She got super happy, but then she got super sad. She was like, listen, I have 2 kids, and I cannot give one of them a bike and not the other one. So please just give this to a different parent who will be able to give it to their kid who only has 1 kid. And with the charity, actually, the fundraiser went but we raised about 50 more bikes and helmets than we thought we were going to. So we had extras, and I'd known that, and I was like, well, you know what? Like, how old's your other kid? Gender, whatever. We figured it out, and I was like, actually, we're going to be able to give them a bike too, so we'll be able to give 2. And this lady literally in place just like collapses, and she's like crying, and she's just so fucking happy. And when you do stuff for other people, there's a lot of times where they won't appreciate it. Like, I've noticed that. Like, it's just part of it, and doesn't matter. Like, you're not doing it for that appreciation, and if you are, like, you need to get to a different place mentally. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to accept that that's how it is, man. People aren't, they're not always grateful. But then you see something like that happen, and I was just thinking about that all day as we were giving out all the bikes, and at the end of the day, I was sitting with this feeling of like wholeness that I hadn't felt from any other thing. Like, that year, like I had mentioned in the last podcast, I accomplished more than I wrote my book. I did all these things. Nothing even came close to comparing to this. Like, I was sitting there like almost like clutching my heart, like, why do I feel so fucking good right now?
Yeah.
And, the thing I figured out, like, you'll never regret doing something nice for somebody else. Like, and I have no idea what the fuck the point of this life is, but I'll tell you, that's got to be part of it. Like, for me anyway, that's what I've realized. Like, doing something for someone else, like, to use whatever gift it is you have, like, in my sense, like, it will just make your life better if you use those gifts to help somebody else.
Yeah, dude. And it's one of those things, man, it hits home too, dude, is the fact that, like, you don't see that every day. We don't see the gratification that people have towards somebody else for what they did for them, right? Like you talked about, like, everyone came in and got their bikes and everything else like that. And after a while, I'm pretty sure it became like, oh, here you go, thank you. 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 And it became this kind of repetitive thing where you're like, all right, cool. And, like, it was kind of leading to where there might have not been a wholeness to it because of the fact that everyone that came in there didn't show the gratification to you giving them the bike, right? And then all of a sudden, God went ahead and sent this angel. We can use this lady as an example, right? Of like, hey, look, you did something fucking super fucking rad, right? Like, you started Project Motive, and you had so many people donate money and raise money for it, and all of a sudden he wanted to show his gratification towards you in a way, and it was a lady, right? And, like, you literally were like, oh, let's go and take care of it. And when she fell to her knees, like, that was probably what made it whole, was a fact to see, like, she was to show gratification for everyone else in there for you. It only took one.
Yeah.
That's the funny.
Oh, definitely only took one. Like, it was like the day, life, year made at that point. Like, it was pretty epic. But yeah, so I think probably to wrap like that part of the conversation up, I just think that, you know, whatever it is you want to do, like whatever athletic pursuits, whatever goals, like there's probably a way to make it mean more, and that way is probably to dedicate it to something that's a little bit bigger than yourself and your own needs and pursuits. And if you do that, like, not only are you going to be more prone to being successful in that endeavor, but you're going to feel better about it.
Yeah, it's 100%, because like in the last show we did talk about that, right? Like setting up like what are our core values, and setting up like what defines us, and setting up like the sacrifices, and you know, creating a better success rate, right? And if you're looking to do this not just for yourself but do it for others also, that also increases one's success rate in what you're doing.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, dude. Solid, man. No, man. Thanks, dude. Like I said, I'm excited. I'm excited for the year of training and life and helping people out in ways that others can't do it. And it's stoked to have you by the side, dude, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, you know, for people listening to this, a lot of times this sideshow that we're doing, it's like we'll probably get into much bigger topics than training. But then, you know, there are a lot of people that listen to us and really like the training aspect of it. And so I would encourage people, like, if you guys have questions about that, like, reach out to either of us. We're both pretty accessible, and you know, I'm always experimenting with new ways to train and like inch a little bit more performance out of myself, new lifestyle things. So yeah, if you guys have questions, like, definitely feel free to shoot them at us. And although we don't always talk about training specifically on this podcast, we'll definitely help you out.
Definitely. You can hashtag us as the Power Couple Podcast.
That's right. Someone said that.
Yeah, that was actually to Noah. Noah said that about us, dude. Noah. Oh man, I couldn't stop laughing.
All right,
so
we'll end it there. Perfect. Thanks, man.
Thanks, dude. Laters.
Thanks for listening to LionHeart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like LionHeart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track in delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcomed. If you have any comments on the show or would like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@luavive.com. That's LUAVIVE.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke, white, Escalade on cinches for you dipshits. So you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland is